After 3 years of silence, I received a letter from my dad, and the moment I looked closer, my heart stopped. I'm Tessa, 24, and he disappeared from my life without a word, leaving behind only questions and pain. But this letter, it hinted at secrets I never imagined, mysteries that could change everything I thought I knew about him. Where are you watching from? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more family drama, emotional courage, and shocking revelations. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was sitting on my couch, staring blankly at the muted TV. The day had been long, work was exhausting, bills were piling up, and I was just trying to unwind. That's when I noticed it, a plain white envelope, slightly crumpled, lying on my apartment floor just past the door. My pulse spiked instantly. My heart thumped in my chest, as if warning me to stop, to leave it alone. But curiosity, that stubborn, dangerous kind, wouldn't let me. I bent down and picked it up. The handwriting made my stomach lurch. Slanted, slightly messy, and yet unmistakably familiar. Could it be? No, it couldn't. Not after 3 years. Not after the way he had vanished from my life without a word. I didn't immediately open it. My hands hovered above it like it was a live wire, ready to shock me. Every instinct screamed caution, but I couldn't resist. I carefully pulled the envelope apart. Inside, there wasn't just a letter. There was a map, folded neatly, with small, handwritten notes along the edges, and a tiny, folded piece of paper on top. My breath caught. The paper said, in shaky, hurried letters, "Tessa, you need to see this. Everything I left unsaid starts here." My hands trembled as I unfolded the map. The landmarks were familiar. The old diner on Main Street where he used to take me after school, the small playground where he pushed me on the swings, the corner store where he secretly bought me candy when I wasn't looking. But there were also new locations, places I didn't recognize, marked with cryptic symbols. A mix of emotions crashed over me: anger, fear, hope, and disbelief. After 3 years of silence, why now? Why this? And what exactly had he left for me to find? I sank onto the couch, clutching the map, my mind racing. I tried to steady my breathing. Was it really him? Or some cruel prank designed to stir up old wounds? I ran my fingers over the paper, tracing the landmarks, and memories came flooding back. I remembered the laughter, the small moments that had made life feel bearable, like the time he stayed up late to help me build a model rocket, only to knock it over and laugh so hard he cried, or the time he handed me a chocolate bar and winked when he thought my mom wasn't watching. Those memories were precious and painful now. And then there were the darker memories, the arguments that left the apartment echoing with slammed doors, the nights I cried alone, wondering what I had done to push him away. Those memories were raw, like open wounds that had never fully healed. A sudden noise made me jump, a soft knock on the door. My pulse quickened. Could someone have been watching me? I quickly looked around, but the hallway was empty. Probably just the old building settling. I told myself. Still, the envelope felt heavier in my hands. I set it on the coffee table, my eyes darting back and forth between the map and the note. My mind was spinning. Could I trust this? Could I trust him after everything? My mom used to say, "Some people disappear, not because they don't love you, Tessa, but because they can't face themselves." I had hated that explanation then, but now I found myself wondering if it might be true. I made myself a cup of tea, hoping the ritual would calm my racing thoughts. The steam rose and curled around me, carrying the faint scent of chamomile and something familiar, maybe a hint of my dad's old cologne, a scent I hadn't smelled in years, but still remembered. I held the cup between my hands, trying to focus on something tangible. My phone buzzed. It was Kyle, my best friend since high school. I had to call him. "Hey," I whispered into the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tess." Everything okay? His concern was immediate, sharp. I, I got a letter from my dad. I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a long pause. Wait, what? After 3 years? Yeah, I said, my hand still trembling. And it has a map. And a note. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should follow it. I don't know if it's even really from him. Kyle's voice softened. Tess, I don't know what to say, but maybe this is your chance. Just be careful. Don't rush. I hung up, my mind spinning. Kyle was right. I had to be cautious, but my curiosity was overwhelming. I stared at the map again, memorizing every line, every landmark, every symbol. I could feel my pulse in my ears, a steady drum of anticipation and fear. Hours passed as I examined the map in detail. I traced my finger along streets I had walked 1,000 times, visualizing the places I remembered. I even jotted down notes in my notebook, observations, questions, patterns. There was a strange thrill in the process, like piecing together a puzzle whose image I had only glimpsed in fragments. I noticed the small details that made my heart skip. Faint fingerprints smudged on the envelope, a tiny tear at the top corner of the map, the hurried, uneven handwriting on the note. It had to be him. No one else could have left something so precise yet personal. By midnight, I realized I hadn't eaten all day. My stomach growled, but I couldn't focus. I made a quick sandwich and drank some water, my eyes darting back to the map every few seconds. Every crease, every symbol seemed to hold some hidden meaning, like a secret only I could uncover. As I sat there, the apartment felt unusually quiet. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside my window made me jump. I felt as though the walls themselves were watching me, waiting for me to take the next step. I decided to check the first location marked on the map. It was a small park near my childhood home, a place filled with memories of laughter and small arguments with my dad. I grabbed my backpack and packed essentials, water, snacks, my phone, a flashlight, and even a small pocket knife, more for comfort than necessity. Before leaving, I paused and looked at the envelope one last time. The thought of confronting the unknown made my stomach churn, but there was no turning back. I whispered a small prayer, not for forgiveness, not for reconciliation, but for courage to face whatever awaited me. Sleep that night was restless. Dreams were filled with shadowy streets, cryptic symbols, and glimpses of a man I loved and feared in equal measure. Every dream ended with the same question echoing in my mind. Why now? The next morning, sunlight streamed through my blinds, casting golden patterns across the floor. I felt a strange mixture of dread and anticipation as I packed the envelope and the map into my bag. Every sound in the apartment seemed amplified, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the stairs, even the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "Dad, whatever this is, I'm ready." Before I left, I paused by my phone. "Where are you watching from?" I asked aloud, as if speaking to an unseen audience. Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family drama, emotional courage, and twists you won't see coming. I grabbed my keys, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and stepped out into the crisp morning air. The envelope felt heavy in my hand, heavier than paper should ever be, loaded with the weight of years of silence, unanswered questions, and unspoken words. As I walked toward the first location marked on the map, the city felt different, somehow transformed by anticipation. Every familiar street, every corner, every shop seemed to hold a secret, and I was determined to uncover it. The journey was just beginning, but for the first time in years, I felt the possibility of answers, and maybe even closure, within reach. The letter had shaken my world, yes, but more than that, it had awakened something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. hope that I could finally understand the man who had left me so suddenly, hope that I could confront the truth, no matter how painful, and hope that I could finally, at long last, take the first step toward healing. The morning air was crisp as I stepped out of my apartment, the envelope and map still clutched tightly in my hands. The city hummed around me, the distant honk of a car, the chatter of pedestrians, and the faint smell of coffee drifting from a nearby cafe. Everything looked familiar, but somehow it all felt different. The streets I had walked countless times now seemed to hold secrets I had never noticed before, like the world had been waiting for me to pay attention. I unfolded the map again, tracing the first set of markings with my finger. The lines led to a park I had practically grown up in, a place of memories both joyful and confusing. I remembered afternoons spent swinging as high as I could, my dad's laughter echoing behind me. And yet, there were shadows in those memories, moments when his attention would vanish, leaving me alone with questions I didn't know how to ask. I started walking toward the park, my backpack heavy with essentials and my heart heavy with anticipation. As I passed the corner store on my way, a familiar voice called out, "Tessa, is that you?" I turned to see Mrs. Langley, the elderly neighbor who had watched me grow up. She leaned on her cane, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "Hi, Mrs. Langley," I said cautiously, holding the map close to my chest. "I haven't seen you in ages. You look, well, older and busy," she said, squinting at me. "Yeah, I'm just dealing with some family stuff," I muttered, unsure how much to reveal. She nodded knowingly. "Family can be complicated, can it? Listen, dear, I don't mean to pry, but your dad, he's been leaving little hints around town for a while now. Small things, almost invisible. You might want to check your old spots, the places you two shared." My breath caught. Could she know about the map? Or was she just speaking in generalities? Either way, her words made my chest tighten. I thanked her and continued toward the park, every step feeling heavier than the last. The park itself was quiet, almost deserted, save for a few joggers and a couple of parents pushing strollers. I followed the map's directions carefully, pausing at the swing set, the sandbox, and the old slide. Each landmark brought back a flood of memories. The way he would push me on the swing, the small arguments over whether I was too old to play in the sand, and the quiet moments when he would sit beside me, seemingly lost in thought. Then I noticed something I hadn't expected, a small, folded piece of paper tucked into the corner of the slide's railing. My heart jumped. Carefully, I picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakably his, neat, precise, but with a hint of urgency. "First step completed. Keep your eyes open. Some truths are hidden where memories linger." My pulse quickened. So this was more than a random letter. It was a deliberate trail, a breadcrumb path designed just for me. The thrill and fear tangled together in my stomach. What kind of truths awaited me? And why did he choose to reveal them this way, piece by piece? I noticed a faint engraving on the bottom of the sandbox, my initials, etched years ago when I was younger, alongside his signature, TJ. The sight made me pause, almost laughing at the nostalgia and pain colliding inside me. I crouched down, running my fingers over the engraving, remembering how we used to carve little symbols into the wood. He had always done things like that, little secret messages meant only for me to find. As I stood, I realized the next location was a diner a few blocks away. I had almost forgotten it, but the map marked it clearly with a tiny circle and a question mark. I hesitated, remembering the last time I had been there with him. We had shared a small booth by the window, him joking about my obsession with chocolate milkshakes. That had been the last time I had felt normal with him. Walking to the diner, I tried to prepare myself mentally. What would I find there? A note? Another map? Or was this some cruel test leading me into disappointment or even danger. The city streets felt alive in a way they hadn't before. Every passerby seemed like a possible witness, every storefront window a mirror reflecting my anxious face. The diner smelled exactly the same: fried eggs, bacon, and the lingering sweetness of coffee. I paused at the door, letting the familiar scent wash over me. It was comforting, yet it made the anxiety coil tighter in my stomach. I walked in slowly, eyes scanning the room. A waitress glanced at me curiously, but no one else seemed unusual. Then I noticed a napkin on the edge of our old booth, folded neatly with his handwriting again. "Look under the seat." My hands shook as I bent down and lifted the booth cushion. Beneath it was a small locked box. My fingers trembled as I held it, turning it over in my hands. There was a combination etched into the side, barely visible. It matched one of the numbers on the map. My pulse raced. I opened the box to find a few old photographs, some of me as a child, some of him with places I didn't recognize. There was also a small key and a tiny folded note. "This opens the next door. Remember, Tessa, not all doors are literal." I felt my head spin. What did he mean by "not all doors are literal"? Was it a metaphor, or something I had to find in the city itself? The cryptic nature of his messages made my mind race. Every step felt like a puzzle piece, each leading to another, and each carrying emotional weight I wasn't sure I could handle. I left the diner and walked to the next location, a small, almost forgotten bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The air smelled of old paper and dust as I entered. There was a faint rustle behind a shelf, almost like the building itself was whispering. I followed the map, my fingers tracing the spines of books until I found a hollowed-out section. Inside, another note: "Some memories are hidden where you least expect them. Trust what you feel, not just what you see." The words made my stomach knot. I paused, leaning against the shelf, trying to understand the message. It wasn't just about following a map or finding objects. He was asking me to connect emotionally, to trust my instincts, to remember our bond in ways that went beyond the tangible. I spent a long while there, walking through the aisles, letting memories wash over me. Each book I touched reminded me of him, how he used to read to me when I was little, his voice low and comforting, making up stories as he went along. The emotional weight of the journey began to settle into my chest, both heavy and oddly warm. By late afternoon, I had traced half the clues on the map. I stopped at a small fountain in the town square, a place I hadn't visited since childhood. Water splashed softly into the basin, catching the sunlight and throwing tiny prisms onto the pavement. There, taped to the edge of the fountain, was another note: "The truth is closer than you think. Look at what you've always ignored." I stared at it, confused. What had I ignored? The way he left without explanation? The small signs of his love hidden in everyday gestures? Or was it something more immediate, something I needed to see here, in the fountain? As I crouched to inspect the fountain, I noticed something unusual: tiny initials carved into the stone, almost eroded by time. T and J. My breath caught. Those were ours. I had never noticed them before. My father had been here recently, leaving traces of himself, subtle but deliberate. I spent the next hour meticulously checking the area, my notebook filling with observations and questions. Each clue seemed small on its own, almost insignificant, but together they painted a story I hadn't been ready to see until now. He had been leaving a trail for me, a path of memories, reminders, and challenges designed to reconnect me to him in ways words alone never could. As the sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the square, I realized I had been tracing these clues all day, physically exhausted but mentally alert in a way I hadn't been in years. Every step brought both fear and hope. a combination that made my heart pound and my mind whirl. I knew that the next steps would be even more complicated and possibly more revealing, but for now, I had to pause and process what I had discovered. I found a small bench nearby and sat down, the envelope, map, and notes spread around me. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths, trying to steady my racing thoughts. The city was quieting as evening settled in, and I felt an odd sense of clarity. Each clue, each message, each landmark was part of something bigger. He was guiding me, testing me, maybe even preparing me for something I wasn't yet ready to face. The weight of the day, combined with the emotional intensity, made my eyelids heavy. But sleep couldn't come yet. I had to make sense of the clues, organize my thoughts, and figure out what the next steps were. Every detail mattered. Every memory mattered. Every note mattered. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt a connection to him that was real, fragile, and full of possibility. I packed up my things, feeling the slight chill of evening air brush against my skin. Tomorrow, I would continue tracing the remaining clues. The evening air clung to my skin as I stepped away from the fountain, the weight of the day pressing on my shoulders. Every clue I had uncovered so far felt like a breadcrumb leading me into deeper, murkier territory. I could feel it, the presence of things I had long tried to forget, memories I had buried under layers of routine and denial. The map, now crumpled slightly from constant handling, pointed me toward an alley near my old neighborhood, a place I hadn't dared visit in years. I hesitated at the entrance. The alley was narrow, shadowed by tall, graffiti-covered brick walls, the dim glow of a flickering street lamp casting eerie patterns across the wet pavement. The scent of damp concrete mixed with something faintly metallic, a smell that sent a shiver down my spine. It reminded me of nights long ago when my dad would take me here on walks after arguments at home, trying to diffuse tension with stories and jokes. Those nights had always ended in silence, both of us walking separately, pretending everything was normal. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, my shoes echoing softly against the pavement. Every step brought a rush of memories, some sweet, some bitter. I remembered the small murals he used to point out to me on similar walls, explaining them as hidden messages from the world. He had always seen the world differently, noticing details others overlooked. And now, those details were part of a trail, a secret path only I could follow. Halfway through the alley, I noticed something that made my heart tighten. A small, torn photograph stuck under a loose brick. I bent down, carefully prying it free. It was an old picture of my dad and me standing outside this very alley when I was 8 years old. We were smiling, though my eyes betrayed confusion even then. Scribbled across the back of the photo were 2 words. Remember this. The words struck me harder than I expected. I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. How could he have remembered this place after all these years? How could he know I would come back here, guided by a trail of cryptic clues and long-buried memories? I pocketed the photograph and continued, my eyes scanning the alley walls. Something caught my attention. A faint symbol etched into the brick, a small star surrounded by a circle. My pulse quickened. I recognized it immediately. It was the same symbol my dad had drawn in my notebook when I was a child, a secret code we had made up to mark important places or messages. Following the symbol, I arrived at an old locked door at the end of the alley, partially hidden behind a stack of discarded crates. I crouched, examining the lock. There was a combination, scratched faintly into the metal, almost invisible in the low light. I felt my hands tremble as I entered the numbers, the memory of his handwriting guiding me. The lock clicked open, revealing a dimly lit storage space beyond. Inside, dust motes danced in the pale light from a single overhead bulb. The room smelled of old wood, damp cardboard, and something faintly like his cologne. My heart pounded as I stepped inside. Shelves lined the walls, filled with boxes, old photographs, and stacks of papers tied with fraying ribbons. On a small table in the center lay a notebook, its cover worn and familiar. I picked it up, flipping through the pages carefully. The notebook was filled with sketches, maps, and notes, some of them about our past, some seemingly about me. One page had a drawing of our old living room, down to the smallest detail. The crooked lamp, the faded rug, the bookshelf I had climbed when I was little. Beside the drawing was a note, written in his hurried handwriting. Some truths are heavier than you think. Face them. I sank into a chair, gripping the notebook, my eyes welling with tears. Each page brought back memories I had long buried. The laughter, the arguments, the quiet nights when he would sit beside me, tracing my hair with his fingers, telling me stories about the world. But there were also memories of pain, of confusion, of the silence that followed him leaving. Suddenly, a sound made me jump. Something shifted in the corner of the room. A shadow, subtle but unmistakable. My heart raced. I strained my eyes, but the dim light made it hard to see. Was it just my imagination playing tricks on me in this dusty, forgotten place? Or had someone else been here, leaving these clues with a purpose I didn't yet understand? I rose slowly, moving toward the shadow, my footsteps careful on the creaking floorboards. As I got closer, I realized it was a mirror, cracked and covered in dust. I wiped it clean, revealing my reflection and the faint outline of a message scratched onto the glass. Look at yourself. The past is never gone. The words made me shiver. I stared at my own face, searching for the girl I used to be, the daughter who had cried alone when he disappeared. I saw the tension in my jaw, the worry lines forming near my eyes, the mixture of fear and determination that had defined me for the last 3 years. The past wasn't just memories. It was a living thing shaping me even now. I set the notebook down and walked toward a stack of boxes in the corner. One of them had a label in my father's handwriting. Tessa, important. I opened it to find items I hadn't seen in years. My childhood toys, our old photo albums, and letters I had written to him but never sent. Each piece was a fragment of the life we had shared, a life interrupted by his sudden absence. I picked up a small stuffed bear, its fur worn and faded. I remembered him giving it to me when I was 6, telling me it would protect me from nightmares. Holding it now, I felt a mix of nostalgia and anger. Why had he left me? Why had he abandoned these small fragments of our life for me to stumble upon now? As I explored the room further, I found a journal newer than the notebook with dates spanning the last 3 years. My hands shook as I opened it. The entries were raw, emotional, and filled with confessions. He had written about his struggles, his regrets, and the reasons he couldn't stay. He had described nights lying awake, thinking about me, wondering if I had moved on, hoping I would forgive him someday. Tears streamed down my face as I read his words. The anger and betrayal I had felt were still there, but now they were mixed with understanding, with empathy for the man I had once adored, and now barely knew. His struggles hadn't justified his absence, but they made him human in a way I hadn't allowed myself to see before. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling behind me. My heart leapt. I spun around, expecting someone, but the room was empty. The sound came again, this time from the far corner. I moved cautiously, following it to a small trapdoor in the floor. My father had hidden something beneath it, something he had planned for me to discover only after tracing this path. I knelt, lifting the trapdoor to reveal a small wooden box. Inside were more photographs, a few trinkets from my childhood, and a letter addressed to me in his familiar handwriting. I held my breath as I unfolded it. Tessa, if you're reading this, You've found the pieces I left behind. Some of the shadows you've carried were mine, not yours. I can't undo the past, but I can guide you to understand it. These clues, these memories, they're yours to reclaim. Face them with courage. I've left the rest for you to discover. I sank to the floor, the weight of his words pressing down on me. The shadows of the past weren't just his, they were mine too, shared in laughter, in pain, in absence. And now, for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I had traced the clues, confronted the remnants of our shared history, and begun to see the patterns he had hidden for me to uncover. The night grew darker outside, the alley now bathed in moonlight. I stayed in the storage room, surrounded by the remnants of our past, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion, relief, and anticipation. Every shadow, every memory, every clue had brought me closer to understanding him. And myself. I knew that tomorrow would bring more revelations, more challenges, but for now, I allowed myself to sit in the quiet, listening to the echoes of my past. The shadows weren't just reminders of loss. They were evidence of love, of connection, and of a story that was still being written piece by piece. As I closed the trapdoor and gathered the items I had found, I realized something important. The shadows of the past were not meant to haunt me indefinitely. They were meant to guide me, to show me where I had been, what I had lost, and what I could still reclaim. Stepping out into the night air, carrying the fragments of my history with me, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I had traced the clues, confronted the shadows, and begun to weave them into a narrative I could own. For the first time in years, I didn't feel lost. I felt like I was finally starting to understand the man my father had been, the daughter I had become, and the journey that lay ahead. The alley was silent as I walked home, my backpack heavier than before, but not in a burdening way. The weight was meaningful, full of discoveries, truths, and the bittersweet mix of emotions that had always defined my relationship with him. I knew the path was far from over. But the shadows of the past, once frightening and oppressive, had become a map in themselves, guiding me toward understanding, resolution, and the next chapter of my story. I walked home through the quiet streets, the fragments of my past clutched tightly in my backpack, my mind racing faster than my feet could carry me. The night had deepened into a heavy, velvet darkness, the kind that makes every familiar corner seem alien. Streetlights flickered overhead, shadows stretching like tendrils across the sidewalks. Each step felt weighted, as if the memories I carried were physically pressing me down. But for the first time in years, I felt that weight was meaningful, not crushing like it was pushing me towards something I needed to face. When I finally reached my apartment, I closed the door behind me and sank onto the couch, exhausted but restless. I spread the photographs, letters, and trinkets across the coffee table, tracing my fingers over them as if their touch could whisper answers. There was no denying it anymore. My father hadn't simply disappeared out of malice or neglect. He had left pieces of himself behind, waiting for me to discover them. But why now, after 3 long years? Why the secrecy, the puzzles, the cryptic trail? The questions buzzed in my head like insects, impossible to swat away. I reached for the last letter, the one I had found in the trapdoor of the alley, and unfolded it again. His words felt sharper, clearer, as if they were speaking directly to the part of me I had kept hidden for so long. Tessa, the truth is not always easy to face, but it is yours to claim. Remember, the shadows you see are often just the absence of light, not the absence of love. I read it over and over, letting the meaning sink in. Shadows, absence of light, love. It was poetic, almost comforting, yet it carried a sting I couldn't ignore. My heart ached with the betrayal I had felt, the anger that had festered in my chest since he left, and the longing that had never really gone away. I closed my eyes and whispered his name, and for the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of everything, pain, confusion, hope, and fear, at once. I realized then that confronting the truth meant more than understanding the past. It meant facing my own emotions, my own judgments, my own fractured sense of trust. And the truth wasn't just hidden in his letters or the clues he had left. It was hidden in me, in the way I had lived for the past 3 years, in the decisions I had made in his absence, in the walls I had built around my heart. The next morning, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers straight from him. I had followed the trail he left, uncovered the memories he had preserved, and now I had to confront him directly. My hands shook as I dialed his number, though I had no idea if it would connect or if he even wanted to answer. The line rang. I held my breath, heart hammering in my chest. "Hello." The voice was older, rougher than I remembered, yet unmistakably his. "Dad, it's me, Tessa," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk." There was silence for a moment, the kind that stretches infinitely in both directions, holding all the weight of years in between. Then he spoke. "Tessa, I've waited for this call." His words were simple, but they carried a gravity that made my chest tighten. I arranged to meet him that evening at the park, where he had left the first clue. As I walked there, my mind replayed every memory, every letter, every photograph. I knew I was walking into a confrontation, but I also knew it was a confrontation with the truth itself, not just his truth, but mine too. When I arrived, he was already there, standing beneath the old oak tree we had spent so many afternoons beneath. He looked smaller than I remembered, yet there was an intensity in his eyes that made me both fear and hope at the same time. He greeted me quietly, almost cautiously, as if testing to see whether I was ready. "Hi, Dad," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Hi, Tessa," he replied, and for a moment, the air between us was filled with unspoken words, tension, and years of absence. We walked slowly along the gravel path, the leaves crunching softly beneath our feet. I asked him directly, the words spilling out before I could second-guess myself. "Why did you leave? Why did you disappear without a word?" He stopped and took a deep breath, looking down at the path. "I had my reasons," he said, "finally. Reasons that I thought would protect you, protect us, but I see now that it only caused pain." "Protect me? You left me alone." My voice trembled, a mix of anger and hurt. "You didn't just leave. You vanished. For 3 years. I had no idea if you were alive, if you cared, and now you expect me to understand." He flinched, as if my words struck deeper than I imagined. "I don't expect you to understand yet. I only hope that someday you might. There were things I couldn't tell you, things I thought would hurt you more if you knew too soon." I looked at him, searching for some hint of the father I had known. I wanted to forgive him, to trust him again, but the shadow of abandonment was heavy on my shoulders. "Then tell me. I've followed every clue, every note, every memory you left behind. I need the truth. All of it." He nodded, a weary, almost broken gesture, and we sat on the edge of a low stone wall. His voice was low, filled with remorse, as he began to recount the years he had been absent. The story he told was not the heroic or dramatic tale I had imagined. It was filled with mistakes, regrets, fear, and a desperate attempt to reconcile his past actions with the man he wanted to be. "I made choices I shouldn't have," he said quietly. "Decisions that drove me away from you. I thought I was protecting you from danger, from mistakes, but I see now that the greatest danger was leaving you alone. I failed you, Tessa. I failed as a father." Tears pricked at my eyes. The honesty in his voice, the rawness of his confession, stirred something deep within me. I wanted to lash out, to scream at the injustice of it all. Yet I also wanted to reach across the distance, to touch the man I had once loved without reservation. We sat in silence for a few moments, the park around us alive with the soft hum of evening life, children laughing in the distance, a dog barking, the wind rustling through the oak leaves. In that silence, I realized confronting the truth wasn't just about demanding answers. It was about acknowledging the complexity of human choices, the weight of fear and regret, and the painful, sometimes messy, reality of relationships. I don't know if I can forgive you, I admitted finally, my voice small but steady. Not yet, but I need to hear everything. I need to understand why you did it, why you left me in the dark for so long. He nodded solemnly. And you will. I owe you that. I need you to know that my absence was never about you. It was about me, my failures, my inability to face my own demons. He told me about the challenges he had faced, job losses, health scares, and mistakes that piled on top of one another until he felt trapped. He described nights lying awake, thinking of me, wondering if I had moved on, hoping I would forgive him someday. Every word he spoke peeled away layers of anger I had carried, though not entirely. The pain remained, but it was now coupled with understanding. I asked him about the letters, the clues, the intricate trail he had left for me. He explained that he had wanted to reconnect, but feared direct contact. He had thought that leaving these breadcrumbs would allow me to approach him on my terms, to process the emotions at my own pace. It was selfish, he admitted, but it was the only way I could think to bridge the gap without forcing it, without overwhelming you. The honesty struck me. I could see the careful, flawed logic behind his actions. I could see a man desperate to make amends, but unsure how to do so. My anger didn't vanish, but it shifted, transforming into something more complicated, something that might, over time, become understanding. I asked him one final question, the one that had haunted me the most. Do you love me? His eyes filled with tears. I've always loved you, Tessa, more than anything. Even when I left, even when I made mistakes, that love never went away. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of years of absence, the burden of mistakes, and the hope of reconciliation. I felt a strange warmth in my chest, a tentative bridge forming between the daughter I had been and the father I was rediscovering. We sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Confronting the truth had not erased the pain, but it had illuminated the path forward. I realized that understanding the past didn't mean excusing it, and forgiveness didn't have to be immediate. But facing the truth fully, openly, and courageously was the first step toward healing. As we left the park, walking side by side, I felt a cautious optimism I hadn't felt in years. The journey was far from over, but confronting the truth had given me clarity, perspective, and a renewed sense of agency. I knew the next steps would require courage, patience, and perhaps even confrontation with deeper emotions, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. The shadows of the past had been powerful, frightening, and suffocating, but facing the truth had begun to dissolve them. They no longer controlled me. They were part of the story, part of the journey, and part of the bridge connecting me to the man I had once loved and who was finally, imperfectly, standing before me. The first morning after our conversation, the air felt different, crisp, almost electric, carrying a hint of promise. I stepped out onto my apartment balcony, the city slowly waking below me. Horns in the distance, the aroma of fresh coffee wafting from a nearby cafe, birds arguing over territory. It all felt alive, yet calmer than I remembered. The weight of confrontation had lifted, replaced by a fragile, tentative lightness. I realized I had carried more than anger and pain. I had carried the uncertainty of whether the bridge between my father and me could ever exist. Now, I was beginning to feel that it could. I unpacked the items from the alley, the notebook, the letters, and the trinkets, and laid them out carefully on my kitchen table. Each one seemed to tell a story on its own, a fragment of a larger narrative I had been piecing together. The small stuffed bear, worn and faded, now sat next to a photo of Dad and me, smiling despite the years lost. I ran my fingers over the bear's fur, letting the memories wash over me. There were tears, yes, but also a sense of gratitude. These small pieces, once overlooked, were now reminders of connection, love, and resilience. Determined to honor this new beginning, I decided to take a walk through my old neighborhood, the one filled with bittersweet memories of childhood laughter and whispered arguments. As I walked, I noticed changes. A new cafe where we used to buy ice cream, a playground with fresh paint, and neighbors I barely recognized. Yet, in the midst of all these changes, some things remained untouched: the oak tree in the park, the crack in the pavement near the old alley, the faint hum of life that had always carried me forward. It was comforting, a reminder that while people leave, places endure, and in them, memories linger like silent witnesses. I arrived at the park, the same one where I had confronted Dad. The bench beneath the oak tree looked as weathered as I remembered, yet inviting. I sat down and took out the letters, rereading passages that had once shaken me to my core. Now, they seemed different, less accusatory, more vulnerable, almost like bridges extended across the years. My phone buzzed with a message from him. "Thinking of you. Want to take a walk later?" A warmth spread through me, tempered by caution. I typed back quickly. Yes, I'd like that. The act of reaching out, of allowing him back into my life, felt monumental. It wasn't forgiveness yet, not entirely, but it was a conscious choice to engage, to try to let the light in where shadows had once dominated. When we met, the sky was painted in soft oranges and purples, the kind of sunset that seems to pause time for a moment. Dad greeted me with a tentative smile, his eyes searching mine for signs of readiness. We walked slowly, side by side, letting the silence stretch comfortably between us. It was a silence not of absence, but of understanding, a space where words were not always necessary, and yet every step communicated volumes. We stopped near the fountain, where I had found the first clue. Dad crouched to pick up a small, weathered coin, tossing it lightly in his hands. "Tessa," he said softly, "I kept this for years, not knowing if you'd ever see it again. I wanted you to know that, even in absence, I thought of you constantly." I took the coin from him, its cold metal grounding me in the present. "It's strange," I admitted. "For so long, I felt abandoned, and yet holding this, it feels like a piece of you is still here." He nodded, his voice tight with emotion. "I hoped it would be enough someday. I hoped it would remind you that no matter what, I never stopped caring." We continued our walk, recounting small stories, minor memories that had once seemed trivial but now took on immense significance. The way he had taught me to ride a bike in the park, the afternoons spent sketching under the oak tree, even the arguments over homework. They were not perfect memories, but they were ours. Each anecdote peeled away layers of distance, making space for understanding and empathy. Later, we found ourselves sitting on the grass, looking up at the first stars appearing in the evening sky. I asked him questions I had never dared ask before, about his choices, about the mistakes, about the fears that had driven him away. He answered honestly, without excuses, acknowledging pain caused and lessons learned. There was no defensiveness, no justification, just raw vulnerability. "Do you ever regret leaving?" I asked quietly. "Every single day," he admitted, his voice breaking. "But I had to confront myself first before I could confront you. I had to face who I was before I could hope to be a father again." His honesty was disarming. I realized that closure was not a single moment or a dramatic confession. It was a series of small, truthful acts a cumulative process of acknowledgement, confrontation, and empathy. The journey we had embarked on together was neither linear nor simple, but it was authentic. Over the next few weeks, we began to rebuild carefully and deliberately. Lunches at small diners, visits to the library where I had once spent hours studying, even errands to mundane places like the grocery store became opportunities for reconnection. Each outing was filled with ordinary moments. The way his hand brushed mine as we carried groceries, the laughter when we disagreed over the best ice cream flavor, the quiet conversations about dreams, fears, and the future. These ordinary interactions became extraordinary in their simplicity, proving that reconciliation was built not on grand gestures, but on consistent presence. One afternoon, Dad suggested we visit the old alley. I hesitated initially, the memories of shadows and fear still fresh, but I realized it was a necessary step, a way to face the final traces of our fragmented past together. Walking through the alley, I noticed the symbols he had left, the star, the notes, the photographs tucked under bricks. This time, they felt like markers of a journey we had survived rather than mysteries designed to haunt me. We paused near the trapdoor, where I had discovered the letter and trinkets. Dad turned to me, eyes steady and earnest. "Tessa, I don't want this to be the end," he said. "I want to keep building, every day, even when it's hard. I want to be here, not just in memory or letters, but in life with you." I nodded, my throat tight. "I want that too," I admitted, "but I need to take it one step at a time. I need to rebuild trust, just like you need to rebuild your place in my life." He smiled softly, a mixture of relief and gratitude washing over him. "One step at a time," he echoed. From that day on, our relationship began to transform. I invited him into parts of my life I had previously kept private, the friends I had leaned on, the routines that grounded me, the dreams I had pursued in his absence. He shared his experiences too, not as excuses, but as lessons and context for the choices he had made. Every conversation, every shared experience strengthened the fragile bridge we were constructing. Closure did not come suddenly, nor did it feel like a neatly wrapped package. It was messy, full of unexpected emotions, setbacks, and realizations. Some days, I felt the weight of the past more acutely than others, and on those days I wrote letters to him, not to send, but to articulate feelings I couldn't voice. He respected my space, never pushing, never demanding, but always present, offering a steadying hand when needed. We began creating new memories alongside the old, a blend of past and present that felt organic and healing. I taught him how to make my favorite childhood pancakes, and he shared his attempts at gardening in my small balcony space, laughing when his attempts at growing herbs ended in disaster. Simple dinners, movie nights, and shared coffee became rituals, small but profound, grounding our relationship in the everyday realities of love and care. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, we visited the park again. I carried the stuffed bear, the photographs, and a few letters we had read together. We laid them on a bench beneath the oak tree, a symbolic gesture to honor our past while acknowledging our new beginnings. I looked at Dad, the man who had once been a source of pain and confusion, and now stood as a partner in rebuilding, a guide through the complexities of reconciliation. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice soft but steady, "for staying, for trying, for letting me find you, even after everything." He placed a hand over mine, his grip warm and reassuring. "Thank you, Tessa, for giving me the chance, for listening, for walking this path with me." In that moment, I realized that closure was not about forgetting, excusing, or pretending the past didn't hurt. It was about acknowledging it fully, confronting it with courage, and choosing to step forward. It was about allowing love and understanding to coexist with pain and regret. It was about embracing life in its messy, beautiful entirety, as we walked home together. The sun breaking through clouds in soft golden streaks, I felt an unfamiliar sense of hope. The shadows of abandonment, betrayal, and uncertainty were no longer controlling my steps. They had become part of the terrain, guiding me gently toward a future I could shape. And for the first time in years, I felt that I was not just surviving my past. I was living my present, ready to create a future alongside the man who had once been absent but now had a place beside me. Closure and new beginnings were not a destination, but a journey, one that required patience, honesty, and an openness to love despite past wounds. I had traced the clues, confronted the shadows, and faced the truth. And now, walking into the soft evening light, I understood that life, in all its complexity, offered second chances for those willing to embrace them. As I watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple, I felt a profound sense of calm settle over me, a calm I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't the absence of pain, nor did it erase the memories of hurt, confusion, or abandonment. Those moments were still there, etched into the fabric of my life, reminders of the struggles I had endured and the resilience I had developed. Yet in their presence, I also felt a newfound clarity. For the first time, I could see the full picture, the mistakes, the absences, the regrets, but also the intentions, the love, and the efforts to reconnect. Life had handed me a complicated story, one filled with shadows and light, and now I finally understood that both were essential. Shadows, I realized, weren't always signs of loss. Sometimes they were reminders of what had been hidden, what had been feared, and what ultimately had shaped me into who I was. Looking over at my father, standing quietly beside me, I saw the lines of age, stress, and remorse etched into his face. Yet there was something different now, a gentleness in his gaze, a patience in his posture, a willingness to be present without expectation or pretense. I understood that this journey was no longer about demanding apologies or seeking perfection. It was about acknowledging the imperfections, embracing the vulnerability, and choosing connection over resentment. Every step we had taken together, every conversation, every quiet moment had become a thread weaving us back into a fragile but real bond. And it wasn't just about repairing what had been broken, it was about building something new, something that could stand the test of time, not because it ignored the past, but because it honored it. I thought about the letters, the photographs, and the small tokens he had left for me, the clues I had followed so painstakingly. They were more than relics of a fragmented past. They were the starting points of healing, the tangible evidence of effort and care that had been waiting for me to recognize it. And I realized that closure wasn't a single moment, nor was it a neatly wrapped package I could carry home. It was a process, a series of choices, choosing to listen, choosing to trust, choosing to forgive in increments rather than all at once. It was messy and it was human, but it was also beautiful in its authenticity. As the evening breeze brushed against my face, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers and the distant hum of the city, I felt a surge of hope. The past had been painful, yes, but it had not defined me entirely, and my father, once absent, was no longer just a memory or a shadow. I could see him fully as flawed and human as I was, standing beside me, ready to walk forward together. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future filled not with fear or doubt, but with the possibility of shared moments, laughter, and growth. Life had given me the chance to rewrite the narrative, to reclaim my voice, and to step into each new day with courage, compassion, and a willingness to embrace both the joy and the complexity of love. And so, as the sun finally disappeared behind the skyline and the stars began to sparkle faintly in the twilight, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lifting slightly, replaced by something lighter, freer, and infinitely more promising. The journey had been long, the road winding, But now I could walk forward with my heart open, my soul steadied, and a quiet but resolute certainty that, no matter the challenges ahead, I had found a bridge between the shadows of yesterday and the light of tomorrow, a bridge built on understanding, honesty, and the enduring power of family.